Greetings, everyone, and happy 2022. I'm Selvalis, and I am here with the first tier maker for the channel. Thought I'd do something a little different to start off the new year, and this is partially also for a friend who I was recently talking about Total War Warhammer 2 with. So I thought, in kind of a celebration of the last few years of the game, and also looking forward to the upcoming Total War Warhammer 3, I would rank the campaigns of each legendary lord. So I'm using just the legendary lord tier maker, but this is about the campaigns themselves, not just the lords. So we are taking into account the faction effects, the lord effects. Can you, in vanilla, incorporate the other legendary lords and pick up their power? And general starting locations and such. And I had to go back and do some double checking on certain things to make sure I remembered mechanics right. Specifically, I just blitzed a Marcus Wolfhart first 20 just to make sure I knew what his mechanics were. So, let's see. So, okay, we have all the legendary lords. I checked Oxyotl and Tarox, and that one dwarf are included. So, let's just take it from the top and go through. Quick understanding of this. S tier is the best campaign possible. You will have tons of fun. F tier is do not recommend. CA, please rework. And by the way, there's going to be more than just chaos down there. Surprise, surprise. All right, first, let's start off with Tyrion, the bad boy elf. Oh, Mortal Empires, by the way. I'm doing Mortal Empires, not Vortex, since not everyone's on the Vortex. So, Tyrion, he is the big lord, I don't I don't even know how to put it. Like he's the main elf. It's like he's the main elf, and he is a pain in your ass if you're not playing him on the campaign. However, without the Vortex, Tyrion doesn't actually have a lot going on for him on the campaign. Now, he is in Lothern, he is the strongest of the High Elf Lords, and he does have some pretty good stuff. I'm gonna rate Tyrion as an A tier campaign, because well, he doesn't have a whole lot as he's one of the base game lords. The base game lords kind of suffer what I call the curse of first. They were the first in the game, so they didn't get all that interesting of mechanics. I kind of get the feeling that's going to happen to our demons and Cathayans, or in Warhammer 3, is there's going to be cooler ones in DLC, and it's just because they were the first, they couldn't be too crazy. So yeah, Tyrion doesn't have all that crazy of mechanics, but he does have the ability to confederate all of the High Elf Lords. Most of them are close enough at hand he can get them taken care of. He can send out, I would say he can send out agents to catch the little faraway ones, Teclis and Alithanar. Imric's a bit iffy, but it's doable. He's got easy access to influence. He starts in Lothern, so he's got great buildings. Overall, A tier, not quite S tier, but he's pretty good. Teclis, Mortal Empire's Teclis. This is gonna be a C campaign because you are in Lustria where everyone wants to kill you and you have no friends. Yeah, it's rough. A lot of the Lustrian starting spots are in for it. As the other starting lord, Teclis does not have anything particularly special going for him. He did get a bit of a light rework recently, so the lord himself is fun, but he has nothing particularly special as far as campaign mechanics go. And yeah, there's not that much special about him. He's a high elf, but he's not in Ulthuan, and he's not in a great starting position. The Star Tower is a very, very weak settlement. Only got one minor settlement attached, and right next to you, you've got Luther Harkon. It's Cult of Sotek. Lustria is just a gigantic mess. So overall, C campaign would not recommend. Teclis is a good lord, but just confederate him, and he doesn't have anything special for his abilities. Next, we have Alariel. This is going to be our first S tier, because in Mortal Empires, Alariel has something to do. Alariel has mechanics that keep her relevant for the whole time. She can walk around Ulthuan and power it up. She's got the blood voyages against Helebron, and I like her starting position a little better than Tyrion's. Just it's my preference, and she can get two Sisters of Avalorn faster, which are a great unit. High Elves are no longer just the Sister Spam stack, but it's still a very fun campaign in my opinion. Yes, it's DLC, but it was also the first High Elf DLC, and they gave her a very good campaign, good mechanics, very strong lord, and you have access to the Woodland Spirits, which I think is adds just a little nice variety. I mean, who doesn't like watching the giant trees smash people? So I say Alariel is the first S tier on this chart. Next, we have a Lithanar. He was if I remember correctly, he's FLC, and I don't know. I never really played him too much, but he had more going for him than Teclis. He starts off fighting Aggron. He's the anti Dark Elf Lord, and he has the ambush attack that Skaven have, which is very nice. However, that's just on him and his faction mechanics. The assassinations, they didn't quite have that figured out where you could be given impossible missions, whatnot. So overall, I'm going to say he is a B tier campaign. He's a good lord, he's interesting, he's different, and there are things to do, but CA just didn't quite have the formula down when they made him. But hey, he was free. He's got great voice lines. Overall, very fun lord. Do recommend. It's just there are better options out there. Speaking of better options, we have Altharion, who will be our second S tier campaign because of his mechanics. Altharion's again, you have to play as Altharion to get these. He's in he's got the Mistwalkers, he's got his little Batman cave. Overall, he has a very fun campaign versus Grom the Paunch. I don't remember if the battle's in Vortex or not, but you still get all the battle prep stuff, the mists, the units. Plus, you're a high elf. You've got access to all the other stuff. You can do influence. You can confederate the other lords. You're still in Ulthuan, and you're in prime position to go destroy the old world. Very fun campaign. Very fun lord. Capture mechanic, tortures, and exploitable cheeses of giant economy. Great campaign. Overall, I will definitely say he is one of the top. I'll say he's definitely a better campaign than Alariel. And oh right, you do start technically on a crusade if you're in the vortex, or not the vortex, on the Mortal Empires. I kind of forgot about that, but just disband and go back to Ulthuan. You'll be fine. It takes like a couple turns to get him back and just have him take over the army. Overall, very fun. Highly recommend. His DLC is great. Warden and the Paunch, great DLC. Highly recommend. Wouldn't necessarily recommend the Alariel one unless it's on sale, basically. And then he's free, and these two are base game. All right. Lastly, we have Imric, the Lord of Dragons. I am gonna put him at A tier. Emmerich himself is pretty fun. Dragons are fun, and his mechanic where he has the dragons every 10 turns, I think that's pretty fun and interesting. Not overly fond of his starting location. He is way off in the bottom right corner of the map. He's not really crammed in. Like Deathmaster Snickage is right there, but and Malice is kind of close by. But overall, they're not doing anything too crazy. Um, Again, the distance from the other high elves and generally agreeable factions is kind of difficult because you're the only Dawi down there are not your friends. And then you've got Moors, Krokgar, Khalida. I guess it's kind of crowded where he is, although the others are all heading west very quickly, and he kind of can consolidate the area. Overall, good campaign. Imeric's free, so go ahead and pick him up for free. And dragons are fun. What can I say? So that's it for the High Elves. Now for the Lizardmen, the faction I was most excited for when going into Warhammer 2. I should preface, I didn't know anything about Warhammer Old World going into the Total War Warhammer series. So all I knew was a bit about 40k, so I didn't know Lizardmen existed until I saw them in this, and oh boy was I excited. You'd think I would have remembered them from Blood Bowl. Alright, first up is Mazdamundi. He is gonna be a B tier. Yeah, just there isn't a whole lot going for him. He's in a better start spot than Teclis, which is why he's not C tier, but he doesn't have any cool faction mechanics during Mortal Empires. Like his upper bar at the beginning is just blank. Like until you start getting status effects um or supply lines, like there's just nothing up there for him at all. Like he just doesn't have anything. Krokgar is actually in the same kind of position. It's just yeah. But Mazdamundi himself is a good character. He's fun. He doesn't have too many lords near him at the beginning. Marathi's to the north, and Xyloster Direfin's a bit off to the side. Otherwise, he just gets to wail on some Norskins, humans, and Skaven in the beginning, as long as he can keep Marathi at bay. Uh, yeah, so it's not a campaign I've played too much, but he's got access to some good buildings early on for bonuses, and then he can go south into Lestria. He does have a bit of diplomatic penalty, but that shouldn't stop confederations once you get the steam train rolling. Um, Overall, B tier campaign. I guess you could go north into Nagron if you wanted to, but with a lot of these characters, it is very good to go get your racial homeland and get all those special buildings and the bonuses going, and try and confederate as many lords if you can, if your faction allows it. Examples are like Vampire Coast, you can't confederate them vanilla, so you need a mod for that. Yeah, so Mazdamundi, overall, B tier. Like, good character, Slan are very nice in the Lizardmen, and not too bad of a starting position. Krokar. I will actually give Krokar an A tier campaign just because of his starting position. He's got a pretty easy start with one other lizard man down in the bottom right corner of the map. I forget what that's called technically, but by Lamia basically. And it's him, one other lizard, a Skaven, Kalita, and some vampire counts. So he can very easily crush them early on and then kind of consolidate and build up. Clan Moors is there, and that can get out of hand sometimes, but typically they're more focused on getting to Carrick 8 Peaks, so they'll leave you alone beginning. Since the game's expanded, now you've got Emmerich, Snickage, and all that off to the side, and Nagashazar not too close. He's kind of far away from Lustria, but overall I feel like he is still a fun campaign, a good spot. Uh, yeah, just overall, I'd say he is in a good position. Um, None of the Lizard Lords really have anything too special going for them. I'd say Tic Tac Toe and Tehenuan and Oxyotl have the cool mechanics, but I don't know, just none of the lords themselves are that impressive, and the mechanics can still kind of be sometimes. But also, like Mazdamundi, Krokar doesn't have anything good, but he's just got a fun starting position, and he does. He's one of the Saurus lords and dinosaur lords, so like he boosts Sauruses, he boosts. I think it's the cold ones and Carnosaurs. Again, Curse of the First, but overall fun mechanic, good spot. Yeah, I like him overall. Okay, next we have Tehenuan. I'm gonna give him the S tier for the lizards. Typically, I don't want to give too many S tiers out. High elves were an exception because they've got some really cool stuff. Tehenuan, you'll quickly take over Lustria. You'll probably wipe everyone else out. He's got the best mechanics of the lizards, and overall, like yeah, Lustria's crowded, but you can confederate. It's Nakai, probably Mazdamundi if he's still alive. Like, you can confederate them and you can get Lustria under control relatively early on. Again, we're thinking from Mortal Empires, not from Vortex. So you don't have to deal with the Vortex, but he's got his sacrifices mechanic, he's got spells, he's got units. Overall, I'd say he is a very fun campaign. Again, not one I particularly use. I'll already say right now, if I play Lizardmen, I'm usually playing Krokgar. Or not Krokgar, Gorok. That's the campaign I like. But Tehenua and the Cult of Sotek, they definitely have the best campaign in my mind. You can get Nakai, you can get Itza and Gorok really early on. You can crush Skrolk, what's his name? The Lokir, Ikit Claw. Like you can take them out pretty easily. And wait, no, Ikit's not there because this is Mortal Empires. It gets all the way over there. Yeah, so you don't even have to deal with him. Yeah, Lustria is not as crowded on Mortal Empires, but it's still crowded. But it's definitely the Lizard's home. I think I would say there's the Spinosotek dwarves and Techless. That's about it. Oh, and the Vampire Coast, but they just get. I would say if you can get some Stegodons, the Vampire Coast doesn't stand a chance. All right, Tic Tac Toe. He is gonna be a B tier. He doesn't have anything faction mechanics wise, but he's really good with flyers and is, like, as far as I'm aware, the only flyer oriented lord here. So I'd say Tic Tac Toe is a solid B tier. He's fun. He starts off closer to Krokgar, but in the deserts of Nehekara. So overall, I'd say B tier. It's different. It's a change of pace. You're fighting new enemies, and you've got bonuses for flyers. He can do I forget how it works, but you can make a free Quaddle stack with him, and that's quite interesting. I haven't done it myself, but that looked like a lot of fun. A very interesting Doom stack. Again, different enemies. With most Lizardmen, if you can get your monsters out, it's pretty much game over. Because except for the elves and certain Skaven, like most factions do not have it in them to counter a good monster Doom stack from the Lizards. But that's tier 4 and 5 where you get all that, so it's like early game's a little rough, unless you are Gorok. Okay, this should not surprise too many people. Might be a little harsh sounding, but I feel most people would agree with me on this. Nakai is going in F tier. Hordes don't work. It's as simple as that. It's a concept they've had since in Total War since what was it? Barbarian Invasion on Rome 1. The factions that don't have bases. Problem is, in this game, that just doesn't work. They reworked the Beastmen, so they're now a semi-horde faction, and they tried something different with the Kai, where, yeah, if you conquered something, you would turn it into your vassal, and then you could dedicate it to different gods. I thought that was kind of cool, the whole god dedication thing, working up your bonuses. Some of them were kind of lackluster, but thematically it was kind of cool. And the Kai the Wanderer made somewhat sense as a horde, but execution wise, it just doesn't work. If you're a horde, you are your capital on wheels, and one bad battle could completely derail your campaign early on, and it's happened to me several times. When I saw the trailers for Nakai versus Wolfric, I was so excited because I thought Croc scores were cool. I was really excited for a Croc score lord with lots of bonuses, and it just never happened. The horde mechanics don't work, and Nakai just dies off early. Like I said, earlier I blitzed through a Wolfheart campaign just to make sure that I understood the mechanics correctly. I didn't even touch Nakai, and he was dead within 5 turns, just wiped out immediately. And he never even got to establish his vassal faction. So he's just like he's gone, completely gone. So Nakai in game 3, I really hope gets a rework. I hope they just give up on horde factions in general. Like every faction needs some kind of a base. Like yeah, Nakai himself, his whole thing should have just been like insane movement speed or maybe teleportation mechanics, something like that. Give him some what Oxyotl got. But horde, no, that doesn't work. Warriors of Chaos needs a rework for that. It just doesn't work. Okay, next, Gorok, A tier. Itza is a free LC, and it is Lizardmen on easy mode. Gorok himself boosts the crap out of Saurus's, which makes you a tanky meat wall early on, and you start with Lord Croak. That is a walking tactical nuke with ammo. Just it is insanely easy. You blow up the Skaven, you wipe out everybody in your path. You can confederate to Henoon really quickly. If for some reason you want him to Kai. Yeah, Gorok is fun. Again, not much in terms of mechanics. Has some difficult quest battles, I will say. That is one thing with Nakai and Gorok. They have very hard quest battles. So getting his items can be a bit tricky if you don't understand the battle and the mechanics. But overall, it's Lizardmen on easy mode. Not too much else going for him, but overall, it's fun. You'll get Lustri under control, and then you can start launching your Great Lizard Crusades across the map. Okay, lastly, Oxyotl. I'm going to put him at B tier. I personally did not enjoy his mechanics all that much. Him as a lord just doesn't really work for me. Like, I get the whole sniper thing, but the way I play Lizardman is all about the monsters, and he doesn't do much for that. A lot of what he added didn't really feel like him themed. It was just more patching in the holes in the Lizardman roster. So I'm going to rate him B tier. He's a paid lord. His starting position, you're up in Nagron in the north, which means when chaos comes, you are taking the brunt of it. He's got interesting missions and mechanics, and he can teleport around kind of, but just overall, it didn't quite do it for me. All right, Dark Elves. Malekith. I am going to give him an A tier because Malekith is powerful. His faction is good. He can pick up most of the other Dark Elf lords very quickly through Confederation. His starting position's not great, but you can launch out into Ulthuan once you pacify the locals. Again, this is on Mortal Empires, so you don't have to worry about Throt being around. Sisters of Twilight are much further south. Tarox is a bit of an issue, I think. I haven't honestly played him much, but you have a little bit of Skaven to deal with, even though Throt himself's not there. Overall, I'd say it's an A tier. Once again, Curse of the First, there's not really mechanics on Mortal Empires. There's no Vortex, and he doesn't really have anything special going for him. Overall, though, solid Lord, solid faction, okay starting spot, just nothing particularly crazy. Good character overall. Marathi, uh, B tier. I don't care as much for Marathi. She does, again, Curse of the First, no mechanics. She's the spellcaster, but she has this chaos corruption thing. I never really understood her. I've never really understood Dark Elves in general. She's a bit further south. She squares off naturally against the Lithanar and Mazdamundi. I think Clan Rictus is floating around there too. Now also dealing with Sisters of Twilight and Tarox, so bit crowded where she is now and dealing with some not so friendly foes. She also has diplomacy penalties, so she has a harder time doing confederations with the major lords. Um, she's just kind of in an area where there's not a lot to do. Like, you either have to go north and claim Nagaron, and then by the time you've done that, you have to deal with Tyrion coming over from Ulthuan, or you go south in Lustria, but you're far enough north where whoever's going to win, whether it be Gorok or Clan of Sotek, whoever's going to win down there is one down there. So overall, it's kind of not a great spot. Got to deal with a few angry legendary lords, and Marathi's mechanics, or Marathi doesn't have any special mechanics, and her faction effects are okay. Helebron is gonna be a C tier. She's got the Blood Knights, but otherwise she is just a generic lord. You're right next to Malekith, and it's, I don't know. The Blood Voyages never really interested me. She paired with Alariel in a paid DLC, and I always felt like Alariel won that one hands down. Helebron, I don't know, just didn't quite do it for me. I don't know. Again, I'm a little rough on Dark Elves just because I don't play them all that much. Lokir Felhart is also going to get a C tier. He has some mechanics regarding his Black Arcs, which is one of the big strong points of the Dark Elves, and he is the Black Arc Lord, the Corsair Lord, so he gets his bonuses early when he needs them, because he's in Ulthuan, or not Ulthuan, he's in Lustria, and everyone wants to kill him. He has no allies there except maybe Clan Pestilence, and they never last very long. Overall, it's a character, or it's a campaign that if you want a challenge, I'd say you'd have fun, but I don't honestly recommend him overall. Yeah, he's just not. There's not enough going on there. All right, Malice. This one might be kind of controversial, but I'm gonna say Malice is an A tier. I don't think there's an S tier Dark Elf campaign. So Malice has the whole Zarkan mechanic and trying to get the demon under control. It's a little more fleshed out in the Vortex version of the map, but overall on eight, I would say overall in Mortal Empires, I will get this right, I swear. Malice is still fun. He starts off over in the Dragon Isles, so he's way away from the rest of them. He can give up. He can give up. What is his home? Like Karen Carr or something. So he could give up his Dark Elf land or give up the expedition. Either way, if you get through his mechanics enough, you get Zarkan. It almost is S tier. It's just his starting location, who he's up against: Emmerich, Deathmaster, kind of the Khalida Gorok or Khalida Krokgar. I don't know. It just, I think I'm just biased against Dark Elves, honestly, but he's definitely the best Dark Elf campaign. I'll put him ahead of Malekith, but I wouldn't. I still wouldn't say he's S tier, but he's fun. He's definitely fun, but also he doesn't really do anything for his faction. He's a fun lord and a fun character. Faction wise, not so much. Rakarth, I'm gonna put Rakarth at B tier. No. This one's hard because Rakarth, A tier. Rakarth is the Beast Lord. It's voiced by Ewan Rowan, Ramsay Bolton from Game of Thrones. Just so that if you're a Game of Thrones fan, nostalgia for the good old days. And he's the Beast Lord. He gets fun creatures. You can build some very interesting Doom stacks with him using the stuff. And he's got motive to go out and raid places and fight certain armies because you get his different beasts that way. Overall, I think he is a very fun lord, a very good lord. He is free LC. He just starts in a bit of an awkward spot in Albion, where Nakai would start if you were playing as Nakai. That's the other thing. On Nakai, he doesn't start in Lustria on Mortal Empires. He starts over in Albion, which would have been fun to go raid Bretonnia or the Empire. But it's Nakai. He just gets one shot by the first people with spears. So Rakarth has to deal with the Albion zone. He's got his choice then: hit Norska for his ice monsters, hit the Empire for whatever's in the Empire, Bretonnia, or turn around and hit Ulthuan. That's fun. So good campaign. Not quite S tier, but fun. Alrighty, Skaven, everyone's favorite faction. All right, let's start with. This is Queek Head Taker. I am gonna say is B tier. Why not A tier? Because his faction mechanics aren't particularly good. He just boosts Storm Vermin for the most part, and he actually negatively impacts Greyseers. He does have the Carrick 8 Peaks thing going for him, but that overall didn't quite work out. He doesn't, unlike most of them, he doesn't have a negative on it, I think, or it's like something minor like -2 loyalty. So he doesn't have anything particularly bad on him for that, but he's got the negatives to Greyseers, which are your one of your best Lord options. And he's the starting Lord. He's got the Carrick 8 Peaks at least, so he's not terrible, but it's going to be rough. Now, say AI can take over with him just fine, but it's like the problem is there's just so many better Lords. There's way better factions. Like, hint, there's multiple S tiers coming up. All right, Lord Skrulk, Clan Pestilence. I'm putting them in C tier. Almost thought about putting them at D tier, but Skrulk had some great stuff, but he was just too early. He was one of the starting lords, so the whole pestilence thing never really got to see the light, never got to be fully fleshed out. He's got plagues, and he's got plague monks, and he's got Greyseers, but it doesn't help the fact that he's in Lustria with no allies except maybe Loki or Felhart, who's as likely to ally with him as betray him. Skrulk also needs time to build up to his good stuff, and he just doesn't get that against the AI down there. It's everyone versus Skrulk, basically. Early game Skaven is very rough. Skrulk himself is a good lord. If you can confederate him, good on you. Oftentimes on vanilla, I would send agents to get Skrulk seen, because there's a real good chance by the time I find him, he's already almost dead, especially if I'm coming from like Skaven Blight. So yeah, overall, Skrulk's a good lord, but his campaign is not great. I'm not going to say it's terrible. Like, you're in for a tough start for sure, but if you can play it smart, you can pull out Lustria. Unfortunately, the Skaven are the most spread out of the races because there is no real Skaven homeland. They're the underground faction, so they're all over the place. Actually, now I think about it, Skaven Blight and Ikitclaw might be as close as it gets because they're everywhere but Ulthuan. Overall, though, he's a fun lord. It's just a really rough starting campaign, and his mechanics, there aren't really mechanics in the Mortal Empires. Like, he's got some cool plague stuff, like he can do plagues and not take plague attrition, and his plague monks are stronger, so he definitely boosts something good, but overall, he's just in a really rough starting spot. Rictus with Trench Craven Tail, our first D tier. Yeah, he's free, but I still don't care. You're good at ambushing, which all Skaven are. He has no bonuses to anything but I think Storm Vermin, which are tier 3 and not very useful. Trench himself doesn't really do much except slightly better melee lord, and that also doesn't account for much. He's up in the north versus Naggarond, which was okay at the beginning. It was like, okay, there was no Skaven lord up there, now there is. Except now it's not that good because he's got a Lithanar next to him. He's got Tarox, the sisters. He could end up dealing theoretically with Malice returning or Rakarth confederating Karen Carr and Malekith. So overall, he suddenly won against many, and the many do not like him. Once again, not really in a position to make allies. Overall, just he's FLC and he's a very meh lord. I don't even bother confederating him if unless it's like I'm using the mod that just someone killed off Clan Rictus. Sure, I'll take him. Even then, if you think Malekith's gonna declare war on you, don't. All right, Ikit Claw, S tier. Yeah, Ikit Claw is one of my favorite campaigns, especially on Mortal Empires, because you start with Skaven Blight. You get the capital of Skavendom, the one city that really benefits them, and you can cheese it to a very early tier 5. You're up against Tilia and Astalia early on, two generic southern lords. You only really have to worry about RNS Assault Spite and what's your name again? That guy, Kazrak One Eye. So you don't have to really worry about too many opponents. Forbidden Workshop is amazing. It's a lot of fun. Nukes, need I say more? And he buffs weapons teams, which in my opinion are the best Doom stacks for the Skaven, but the others are very viable. Overall, one of my favorite lords. Great campaign, a lot of fun. You can very quickly send your agents out, and you can go anywhere you want. You want to finish once Astalia is yours. You want to take out Bretonia? Take out Bretonia. You want to mountain hop into the Empire? Mountain hop into the Empire. Go south, take out Kemri, the Badlands. Hell, hit the oceans, show those vampirates who's boss, and take down Ulthuan. Well, okay, that's hostile terrain, so maybe not right away. But point is, you've got options, great mechanics, a lot of fun. All right, Deathmaster. Might be a little controversial, but I'm only going to put him at A tier. He pairs off with Malice, and of the top 3 legendary lords for the Skaven, I do think he's the third best. Snickich is the master assassin, and he came with assassin tools. And he has some very fun campaign mechanics, but he starts off in the corner of the world with one way to go, and not particularly fun opponents. It just takes him forever to get anywhere. If you're playing as a different Skaven, you're probably not going to get him unless, except for maybe Clan Moors, because they're close enough they could kind of get him, or at least find him. He tends to get wiped out early, but all you're up against very beginning is Imrik and Malice tends to stay on his islands. But you have to go through the mountains, the dwarves, the Rictus clan nest, just so much you have to get through in order to actually then get to the interesting parts of the map. I don't quite think it works, but he does also have the Thanos snap. Just click a button, one faction is immediately dead. Overall, he is a very fun lord. He's paired with Malice. Not one of the best DLCs in my opinion, but if you want it, go for it. I'd say he's an A tier. He's fun, he's got cool mechanics, but just that starting position really hurts. Alright, Clan Molder. Also S tier, no questions. The Forbidden Workshop is amazing, and you start off in the north of the Empire. There's a very good chance we're going to see Throt and the Unclean reappear in Warhammer 3 right away, because his Forbidden Workshop is on the map. Oh boy, it's fun. It's a little bit gambling. It's definitely a bit of a crazier mechanic, but one second. Overall, Clan Molder is very fun, building up the monsters, gambling with mutations, and you get to go hit the Empire. There's not a whole lot of factions that actually can just start off whacking the Empire. Game 3 is going to be interesting because Kislev is going to be a proper faction now, not just another Empire settlement. So we'll see how that plays out, but in this variation of Throt, he is definitely S tier. Very fun, very powerful. You get Gorich, the hero. It's not impossible to pick up Snickich and Ikit Claw. Just overall, yeah, S tier, very fun, great theme, great faction. Nothing to complain about, except I want to know what Warpstone tastes like now. Okay, Luther Harkon. Now we're into the Vampire Coast. This is gonna be a little... I don't know. Of the 4, I would say Luther probably is an A tier. He starts off with the Vampire Coast, which is a very powerful faction settlement. He can get secured pretty early on. If you know what you're doing, this faction is bonkers in terms of its guns and artillery. It is undead, so you get some of the fun undead mechanics. And Luther's personality gameplay is in play, and all of the Vampire Coast have the infamy mechanic, the pirate ship mechanic. All of them have good stuff. Overall, though, you can't confederate on vanilla. So that is one of the downsides. He's your legendary lord, and the generic ones aren't that great. It always kind of felt like they planned to add to this faction in future, but they never did. I would say I think they're called the Awakening, Luther's faction. Overall, it's fun. Is it worth the price of a full race pack? I'm not 100% sure, so I'd say wait for a sale if you're going to buy these guys. The others just don't fare as well. Luther's fun, but he's also in Lustria. No allies except maybe Noctilus, who again is likely to betray you as he is to ally with you. So have bribes ready. Speaking of Count Noctilus, I will rank B tier. He starts off in a very weird spot. Noctilus is in the Maelstrom, which is in the middle of the map in the ocean, so there's nobody close by. Typically, you're supposed to go invade Ulthuan, which means you're going to hit Tyrion first, basically. You're running into a very, very tough fight. On the flip side, Noctilus is the Necrofest Colossus Lord. That's his specialty, and he is a vampire spellcaster. Overall, so he's powerful, but his starting position means you need to pick a direction, go, and pray you pull it off, because I've had many a campaign where if you bite off more than you can chew, or you get bad luck with the floating pirates out there, more often than not, you can just be stuck suddenly recruiting back at the Maelstrom with only a couple units, and then suddenly you just can never take off. So, powerful Lord, not so great starting position, no special mechanics. Luther's the only one with really special mechanics. Silostra's got an undead paladin, but that's about it. Aranessa, I am gonna put her at B tier as well. She starts off south of Tilia. She's got some options. She's another Vampire Coast, but she's got the twist of having some living units in the Sartosan Free Militia, because she is the Pirates of Sartosa. So not everybody's undead. Most of them are, but not everybody. She has a real hatred for Norskins. Not that that really matters when you're this far south. Maybe if you're conquering the map, but overall, it's an interesting start position. She doesn't have any particularly unique mechanics. As a lord herself, she's not particularly great. She's one of the few where you don't want to put her on her mount because she's better on foot than she is on that rotting Promethean. She's a melee lord, anti-large, pretty good at taking out monsters. She's got the living units, so sometimes you can survive getting wiped out. Not too much going on. Overall, though, she still has the treasure hunting, the pirate ship, all that stuff, and an okay start position. She's got options. She can go north, fight Tilia and Skavenblight, east, fight the Badlands, south into Kemri, or west if she wants to fight Noctilus and Ulthuan for some reason. Alright, last we have Silostra Direfin. I'm going to rate her as a C tier. So her whole mechanic is she's an undead Bretonnian, so she starts off with an immortal zombie, an immortal ghost paladin, and she can summon spectral knights. I wish they had taken that mechanic further, because that could have been really cool, but that's it. It's just tied to her and Henry, or no, Henry someone else's, whatever his name is. It's just tied to her and her knight, otherwise it's another generic faction, no special events. Nothing, like, they don't go anything further with her opera. She's the Lord of Deeps caster. Nothing particularly special. She starts off only really close to Mazdamundi. She's supposed to go off and invade Ulthuan, but overall, I always find it easier to just go south into Lustria. But again, it's kind of hard to get started early as the Vampire Coast, and when you're up against something like Mazdamundi, he's particularly well suited to just overrun your artillery. So, overall, C tier, has potential for fun, but not like fun lord. I would say just put the recruit legendary lord mod on Luther and wait for them to pop up. All right, Tomb Kings. Tomb Kings. They have some interesting playstyles. First, we have Cetra the Imperishable. I'm going to put him in A tier. I don't think he's S tier. I don't think any of the Tomb Kings are S tier. He's fun, but he's like the Chariot King, and he's got Khemri off the start. If you're gonna play a Tomb King, he's the Tomb King. He goes around, he unites everybody. You'll take over Khemri with him, and then you can go conquer the world. I had one campaign I did a long time ago where I specifically wiped out Bretonnia with him after I took over. That was before Reponse too, so I wasn't even doing it as a counter to that. But the Tomb Kings never saw any updates. Their whole you don't pay upkeep, but you have to increase your ranks of units through buildings. That's kind of cool, but leads to a very weak early game and a very slow progression. You are praying that War Sphinx that he's got lasts you long enough till you can either replace it or put him on one too. Yeah. It's an overall fun campaign. Definitely the best of the Tomb Kings that they have to offer. But yeah, he's the faction itself, it needs a little more love. It was cool when it came out. It's what really put Total War Warhammer 2 on the map. That's when I bought it, was when Tomb Kings came out. I loved the Tomb Kings lore. I loved the stuff. Just the playstyle, really monster dependent on tier 4 and 5 with a very slow growth faction, doesn't really lend itself too well. And the limitations on units, while it's fun, can sometimes really hold you back when you need more stuff. Also, the army limit, that kind of is a bite too. Oh, and the research is slow. So I can't say he's S tier, but he's definitely the best of the Tomb Kings. All right, now we have the Exiles of Nehek with High Priestess What's His Face. He is gonna go at D tier. This is someone who doesn't have a whole lot going for him. His whole thing is he can get more Lich Priests, but he starts off way up in Nagaron, completely surrounded by enemies, no allies, no special buildings to help with any units, and sorry. Yeah, he's in a really bad starting position. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He gets wiped out very early most of the time, especially now he's got freaking Tarox next to him. That Minotaur army is going to blast through any non-monster unit of the Tomb Kings. Even if he starts with a Hydra Titan, he can't survive long. And Lich Priests are okay, but they were never great spellcasters, and his bonuses don't really turn the tides. Like it was such an awkward positioning. He's literally sandwiched up on the edge of the map with barely any desert. It just isn't very fun in both versions of it. I'd say yeah, he's in for a rough time. It's not a fun campaign. I do not recommend him. Tomb Kings can't confederate, so you can't get him either. He is the only true spellcasting starting lord, but I still just that doesn't make up for how bad his start position is. Kalita, lore wise, this is a character I am very fond of. I give her a B tier for her campaign. You start off down in what's her city? It's like she's south of Lamia. So early on, your whole thing is you go take Lamia. You try and befriend Krokgar to the south because you can't handle him if he goes after you. But then you can head through the Red Gorge, through Clan Moors into Nehekara and start taking over there. Lamia is the realm of Neferata. She's not in the game right now. I figure she's coming in game 3. So there's not really the great rivalry to be had, but I get the feeling that the Undead are going to get a rework in game 3 overall, because when the great Bone Daddy comes down, nothing's staying the same. So Kalita's definitely in a good spot. Her whole thing is Poison and Necropolis Knights. Interesting units, kind of hard to use. Overall, like okay-ish mechanics, but nothing too special. All the Tomb Kings have the 9 books of Nagash mechanic and the Black Pyramid. So very much you want to control the actual settlements and get those unique buildings built. Highly recommend like that strategy overall. Kalita's fun, but um, again, just held back by the whole Tomb Kings things. Like you need a lot of buildings to even get her an army of her best units, and you do have to deal with Clan Moors and Krokgar early on, so you can at least diplomacy one of them. But oh, and you have easy access to Gashazar, and that does count for something. Okay, this one's gonna hurt a lot because lore-wise, this is my favorite character. Arkan the Black is a D tier. Arkan's campaign sucks. You start off on the tiniest edge of Nehekara in the Wizard Palace because you lost your tower. You're up against Bretonia. That is the worst possible matchup early on. It's the same, by the way, in Vortex. Doesn't matter. And you get access to vampire count units, but not the good ones. Hex Wraiths are okay, but Direwolves, Bats, and Crypt Ghouls, aka the three things you never use. And you don't get Lore of Vampire either. So, yeah, his bonuses don't do jack shit. You are not able to do diplomacy with the Tomb Kings. Everyone hates you. You get a Tomb Scorpion to start off in the Lore of Death. It's about as hard as a campaign can get. You do not have allies. Nobody likes you. Like you're supposedly allied with the vampire counts, but there's no vampire counts near you, and that did not apply to the pirates. They will attack you. They will come from Lustria to attack you. It has happened. It hurts to say this. If I would say when Nagash comes, I hope that they take Arkan out of the Tomb Kings and they put him as a Morchark. Because yes, he was a tomb official under Nagash. Then he became the Lich King. So if you put those together, he is a Tomb King. But he's more famous for what he did for Nagash than what he did when he was waiting for Nagash to come back and him and Cetra were bored playing chess with people. Okay, that's it for the for the Game 2 races. Not Game 2 Lords, because we got some. All right, Karl Franz. I am going to give him A tier, surprisingly. I'll give you a hint. There will be an S tier, but it's not him for the Empire. I think Franz is a great beginner lord. He plays close to a basic Total War game. That was kind of the whole point, is like the Empire is your bridge from historical to fantasy. And now with the Elector Count system, it's actually very fun. This is an absolute gem of a campaign. And at this point, you can pick up the entire old game, or the old game. So you get all the old races and stuff. You can get most of the Game 1 DLC pretty cheap nowadays when the sales come around. And it really is fun for Mortal Empires. Franz himself, though, is not a great lord. He is a melee lord. He's okay at what he does, and he boosts his units, but unfortunately in this game, magic and specialty are king. You'll notice that currently our 5 S tiers, 4 of 5 are spellcasters, and the 5th one is the monster guy. Franz just doesn't quite have it, but he boosts overall, and he is great on a campaign map from a point of view. Also, as a bonus, he comes with Volkmar the Grim. Like, he's just in your capital because that's one of the oldest characters. And yeah. You're one of the only, what is it? 3 factions that have double legendary lords at the beginning. All the others at this point, well, okay, Chaos, you could get all 3 technically as just, you're always the warriors of Chaos, but Volkmar actually is part of Reichland. So, Elector counts, very fun. Franz, he's good, he's just not great. Starting position in Altdorf leaves a little to be desired just because you really have to go out of your way to get to some of the Empire. And if you're not good at playing the Elector count mechanics, it can get out of hand really fast. Also, you're pretty far north, so you will be dealing with Norska and Chaos when they come. That is one of the benefits to the Southern Lords. You don't have to deal with it right away, or if you're Throt, you can befriend them. Volkmar. Why? Why would you play Volkmar? Play Karl. Just don't play Volkmar. Play Karl. Okay, Gelt. He is the S tier Empire Lord because he gets everything Karl gets, but he's a spellcaster and he has massive bonuses to artillery. Empire needs to build balanced-ish battle armies. And Gelt boosts the most important components of that, which are your artillery to do most of the killing. Gelt is the S tier lord. He's very fun. He gets all the elector count mechanics. He can get Franz pretty good. He's also in a slightly better, interesting starting position because he's further south. He's up against Greenskins and Skaven and Wood Elves early on, but he can quickly backtrack into the Empire to pick up more territory. He's also in a slightly better position to stop the vampire counts from getting out of hand. Overall, I think Gelt is by far the best Empire experience. Highly recommend. Marcus Wolfhart. I just blitzed through him, and I gotta say, he's a D tier. So, Marcus got paired off with Nakai, our F tier, our first F tier. And I gotta say, Marcus had potential, but CA just hadn't quite gotten it through their heads yet that negatives don't make for exciting gameplay. I'm gonna explain that right now, especially when it comes to the Beastmen. Remember their old moon mechanic, because they still have it. You forget about it, but they're still there. Where you'd get to pick a bonus, but then you'd have to take an equally powerful negative. That's kind of what Marcus is, where you can get early, like really good tier units early through his Imperial Reinforcement, but it comes with the hostility mechanic. And the hostility mechanic never goes away. You're always dealing with it. You could completely own Lustria. All the Lizardmen factions are long dead, and you're out fighting the Dark Elves. But that's hostility mechanics gonna keep triggering. This was another case of they were so close to having it figured out, but they just went a little too hard, a little too far in the punish the player side. Basically, when it comes to these, to good mechanics, it should never be punish the player for doing something. It should be reward the player for doing something. Punishing mechanics just don't work, and Wolfheart's mechanics never stop punishing him, even after you max out his whole renown or whatever it is thing. He also does not have access to the elector count system. So if you're playing as him on Mortal Empires, you don't get to play the fun politics. You just get to get eaten by a dinosaur. Do not recommend. Honestly, I would not recommend his DLC, even though it comes with some really great units for the Lizards and for the Empire. I just cannot recommend it. All right, Thorgrim Grudgebearer. A tier. I don't think any of the dwarves are S tier. I'm just gonna say that now. Uh, he's okay. I mean, he's fun. He's probably the best dwarf. You're the High King. You're the Grudge Bearer. You've got the Great Book of Grudges. Overall, dwarves are a fun race. They're a bit slow, but they're a defensive, artillery-based, and tanky race. So they're fun. They have great stuff. The Grudge system's fun. Oath Gold is great crafting. They don't have too much else beyond that. They are one of the original races. They're in a good spot overall. I do feel like they're missing some units, but is what it is. There's still time for more DLC. They didn't actually get any paid DLC during the entirety of Warhammer 2. They got one FLC character at the very end. Overall, though, I'd say he's fun. He's in a good start position, fighting against Grimgor and then kind of uniting the clans. They can confederate each other pretty easily. The grudge system's pretty good if you can keep it under control. Again, has the ability to spiral out, but if you do it right, you get a lot of bonuses. Oath Gold's fun for crafting. I'd say great game, or it's like great mechanic overall. Good race, just not quite S tier. All right, the White Dwarf. Why would you play as him when you can play as Thorgrim? This is another one of those characters who exists with their original, and this is once again one of the ones where from game one the White Dwarf just doesn't have the same mechanics as Thorgrim. Like faction wise, Thorgrim is better. You should always play him. You can just unlock the White Dwarf later in Thorgrim's. There's no reason to play him. Belagar. Oh boy, Belagar. Oof, he's another D tier. So this is another instance of too much punishment on the player. But lore wise, that's accurate as fuck because Belagar is the dwarf or is the king who's got to go get back Carrot Peaks. It's a three-way battle between him, Queekhead Taker, and Skarsnik.
Belagar got the worst end of it. Queek doesn't really get penalties from not having it, he just gets bonuses. Belagar gets massive penalties, including extra upkeep of a ridiculous amount. And he does not start close to it. He starts quite a bit away, and you basically have to beeline it to Carrick 8 Peaks, or if you're on Legendary, suffer probably one of the hardest campaigns short of Arkan to get to Carrick 8 Peaks. And then once you've got Carrick 8 Peaks, congratulations, you are a normal dwarf. That's it. There's no bonuses. There's just your great unforgivable grudge is done. You've got Oath Gold in the Great Book of Grudges. And Belagar's units are not great. His bonuses, he does have those ancestral spirits, but just the sheer level of punishment, they're giving you 4 immortal spirit lords because they know how bad it is. You're starting in an area with 1 ally, bunch of enemies, Skarsnik's coming, good chance Ikit Claw will come at you, Gelt will come at you, the Wood Elves will come at you if you look at them wrong. He's got it so rough. So rough. And he's got to fight his way through the Greenskins to get there, too. Would make sense if he had to fight his way through Skarsnik and Queek, but no, it's like you got to get through Wurzag and Grimgor. That's not fun. All right. The Slayer King, because I don't remember his name, and it's been literal years since I played him. If I remember correctly, he's about a B tier. He's not as good as Thorgrim, but he's got interesting mechanics because he is the Slayer King. He has bonuses to Slayers, which are one of the most fun units, and he's got a good starting position. He fights against the vampires most of the time. Or I think Azag the Slaughterer is there too. Overall, fun campaign. Nothing particularly special on mechanics, but fun. I don't remember if he's a paid lord or not, so can't comment on that. All right, Thoric. I don't remember the rest. He's an A tier. So he's got quests for artifacts that give him unique stuff. He's an FLC lord. I would not give him A tier on Vortex, but this is Mortal Empires, and he's fun. He starts down against Queek in the Red Mountains. He's got missions to go find the old dwarf holds and unlock lost technology. He's a runesmith. He's got almost magic. Very fun. Sorry, I'm trying to speed this up because I've been talking for an hour and I've still got a line and a half to go. Overall, fun character, fun campaign. He's free. Go ahead and pick him up. It's fun. All right, Greenskins. Oh my god, Greenskins. All right, Grimgor is a C tier. Curse of the First. He doesn't have anything particularly special. He buffs Black Orcs. Those aren't particularly great units. Nothing great about him. Nothing special. Don't really care. Skarsnik. B tier. He's also in the race for Carrick 8 Peaks. He starts off with penalties, but only on orcs, but he has bonuses to goblins and night goblins. So he is actually viable at the beginning, but he still has those penalties to deal with. He's definitely the one where it's like, if go take care of it if you can, and you'll be fine. But like in the race for Carrick 8 Peaks, it's always Queek because he's the closest. Skarsnik starts the furthest away. He doesn't have allies nearby, but he at least isn't being crippled by supply lines and stuff like that. So he can fight his way there, but he'll be the last one there. But overall, he's a very fun character. He's a goblin shaman character. He's got a unique model. He's technically the Squig Lord too, but like he's fun. It's a hard campaign, but in the good way, where it's like the penalties aren't crippling, and he does get nice bonuses once he's got Carrick 8 Peaks, and his base bonuses still make him viable on a basically like you're playing with gobos only, no orcs, but that's fine because gobos are great. There's only one lord better than him when it comes to goblins. All right, Wurzag, the Great Green Prophet. He is A tier for sure. He is the Savage Orc Lord. He's got bonuses to Savage Orcs. It's more effective in modded versions, but in vanilla, he's still very fun. He's great early game lord. He's a caster lord, the only one, or one of the only ones for the Greenskins. He's got a great campaign position. He can snowball hard. If you can hit Grimgor early on and beat him one-on-one and force a confederation, you can snowball like crazy. Wurzag is of the base ones, Wurzag is definitely the better of the two lords. But wait, is he DLC? No, I thought Skarsnik was DLC. Yeah, Skarsnik's DLC. Wurzag was one of the other two base lords. Overall, like very fun. I know I'm rapid firing. I'm sorry. Wurzag is great. Very fun campaign. Highly recommend. Go Greenskins. Grom the Paunch, he's S tier, no doubt about it. Grom faced off against Altharion, so our first S tier in our what 2, 4, 6, 7th S tier. They paired against each other in the Warden and the Paunch DLC. I gotta say, this was the biggest surprise out of left field, but in the best way possible. Grom's mechanics are great. He's still got the whole go after Tour of Rest mechanic, even on Mortal Empires, and he's got his cauldron. His cauldron is so fun. Like, you go around collecting ingredients and doing cooking challenges to unlock massive bonuses. He buffs the ever loving crap out of goblins, and he is a powerhouse of a lord. He's got a pretty good starting position, or pretty iffy starting position in Bretonia, but you can overcome it and invade Ulthuan again, or go wreck the Empire. Up to you. I recommend wrecking the Empire. Overall, great lord, 10 out of 10. Azag the Slaughterer, B tier. I don't know all that much about Azog, but he is a lord who has one of the things that's needed to revive Nagash, his Crown of Death. So he is the only death sorcerer for the. Oh, right, and Grom's got troll bonuses. Azog's the only death caster greenskin lord. You have to level him up a little further and finish a quest to get his full powers, but he's interesting. He starts off in the mountain and then invades the Empire, so he's actually the invade the Empire orc, but you're starting off on the Sylvania side, so you kind of got to go through them first, and Kislev, and Drika. And basically, you realize that you're not really the invade the Empire lord, and you got to go through all these walls, so by the time you get to Reichland, Norska's already stomped them. Yeah, sorry, that was my experience with him, basically. Overall, okay, pretty sure he was FLC. Like, there's better options. Grom and Wurzag are the way to go for greenskins. All right, vampire counts. This is going to be a little hard because it really depends on what time of the game or what era of the game you're playing. Because when they started, they were good. Then they got really bad. Then they got really good. And now they're okay. Manfred's B tier. He doesn't have anything great going for him. I don't like the character in lore either, but overall, it's just like not as good as he used to be. The other vampire lords are better. Just that's the simplicity of it. Manfred is okay. You start off in Castle Drakenhof, and you can quickly consolidate Sylvania, get built up, and then go whichever direction you want. There are no campaign mechanics. That's pretty much the same for all of the vampire counts at this point. None of them have anything special going for them. Probably going to see some updates when Nagash drops whenever, probably 2023 if I had to guess. Overall, he's interesting, but some of the other lords are better. Weirdly enough, I'm actually going to rate Helman Gorse higher because this guy has a special gameplay strategy that just works. Like, he is the Necromancer Lord, and he is good. He's the Corpse Cart Lord, too. I don't know why, but it's just better. He is a very good Lord. The pain is that he is in the same faction as Manfred, so if Manfred doesn't recruit him and you confederate him, you don't get him. So either you have to play as him, play as Manfred and unlock him, or make sure he's been spawned in by the time you confederate Manfred. And Manfred is not an easy confederation. Overall, though, fun lord. Vlad. I will also give Vlad A tier. He's the Vard Karstein, the only non-base game double lord faction of the Von Karsteins, because him and Isabella have this whole team up thing. They are a 2-for-1 pair. Whichever you start as, you get the other, but who you start as determines your mechanics. Vlad is all about the subjugation of the Empire, so he'd rather take them as vassals than outright conquer them. He starts in a smaller area, so it's a bit of a harder start, but you can definitely win. All you got to do is basically just wait for Manfred to leave and then go take Castle Drakenhof. He'll probably have been wiped out by Templehof at that point, yada yada. Vlad has great pairings with Isabella, but overall, I don't think he's that great compared to Isabella, but I didn't want to put him in the same tier as Manfred. Isabella, in my mind, is the S tier vampire experience. If you want the best vampire experience, you actually play as Isabella because she buffs the vampire heroes. And that's kind of the thing. Vampires are all about the heroes and the spells. And Isabella buffs the ever-loving crap out of them. Just like with Vlad, you can easily go and steal Drakenhof from Manfred and have a very quick consolidation of Sylvania, get ready, and then wreck the Empire. But her magic is so good. She is a vampire caster, she can get a flying mount, Wind of Death is OP, and she starts off with extra vampires. And then you can recruit Vlad on tier 2, and he'll just be your battering ram. Yeah, there's no reason not to play as Isabella. 10 out of 10, highly recommend her DLC. Last, we have Heinrich Kemmler. I'm going to put him as C tier. He has Krell, which is very unique, a summon that can eventually become a permanent battlefield edition, so basically you always have 21 units. However, overall, he's in a rough spot against Bretonia early on with working on White Kings, I'm pretty sure is his thing. So he's kind of got a rough start position. He's not great with the other vampires. He's got bonuses with Chaos, which amount to nothing. And yeah, he's up against a rough start. The other vampires have it pretty easy. You just need to get your spells up and running. He's got to fight Bretonian horsemen early on, which is really rough with skeletons. Like, it's basically just Krell do all the work early on. They did rework him to make him stronger. Same with Vlad, but overall, I still say Isabella's the best. All right, Norska. Oh boy. Now we're in the not so great stuff. Norska is a paid DLC faction race, and they just are not great right now. Like, I'm going to put Wolfric at C because they have interesting mechanics. The problem is they're a semi-horde faction. They can occupy the Norscan territories, but then when they go, and I think they can occupy ports. I didn't bother testing this one, but I think that's how it works. But then you raise everything else and you dedicate them to your different gods. However, you can't keep the world burned down as everyone just keeps recolonizing because the AI barely pays a penalty for it. So you can't really burn the world down, and it's really hard to win. Wolfric's got a legendary hunt mechanic, which is interesting. It definitely keeps him more exciting than your average lord. But Norska as a race is still greatly lacking in a lot of its units that I think it could have had. And the units it does have just don't work all that well. Throg is a D tier. His whole thing is ice trolls, and he doesn't have the same hunt mechanic that Wolfric does. He's not great. I won't call him F tier, but he is damn close. He's also really prone to getting confederated early on because he starts kind of close to Throg and can get wounded, and then any Norse king can just wipe him out, kind of like with Greenskins. All right, Bretonia, Lewin Leonkur. I'm gonna give him. Yeah, I will give Lewin the S tier. He is the best Bretonian experience. You start with Corone. You basically just go south and beat up or confederate everybody. You might have to fight Norska early on, but like if you want a Bretonian experience, go with him. He's got all his vows. He is great. Yeah, just good Breton. I don't like Bretonia as a faction, but I know he is the best. If I do have to play them, I play him. Albert de Bordelo is D tier. Why would you play him? His bonuses suck. He's all about fighting at sea. He has nothing particularly special about him. The Fey Enchantress, I would say, is A tier. She's got magic. She's the spellcaster lord for Bretonia. I want to say she was the paid. I think she was part of the Lord Pack, and I think Alberic's FLC, but I'm not 100% sure. Spellcaster Lord, little close to Athelloren, but can be friends with them, so that kind of works out overall. Pretty good overall at fighting off what's there, handling the greenskins and the undead, and then you've got your choices of Unite Bretonia, take out the Empire, go south, go Ulthuan. You've got choices. Doesn't have a whole lot in terms of faction mechanics, but the whole Bretonian Lord system and the Knights and the Vows always keeps you doing something. Rapunzel is going to be B tier. She is an FLC Lord. Her whole thing is she's the Crusader in Ehekara. Early on, she starts off on the coast north of Arkhan. You can go wipe him out really easily early on, and then you can lead a crusade against the undead in Khemri. So she brings her cavalry, and if she's moving fast enough, she can wipe them out. You can confederate the other lords. It's an interesting mechanic, but it only plays out in part of the map. She's also got this water thing to avoid desert attrition. I've never really noticed needing it because 5 turns is plenty of time between settlements. Like, I will always either get back to a settlement or take a settlement within 5 turns of leaving one, so I've never felt that mechanic necessary, but it's nice to have immunity to sandstorms. All right, Wood Elves. Um, Honestly, Orion's kind of C tier. His Wild Hunt mechanic doesn't do much. He's a generic Wood Elf Lord, and I don't particularly care for his bonuses to Cavalry. Like, Cavalry is not what the Wood Elves are about. He's an okay Lord, nothing particularly special. You get him with the Wood Elf DLC. It's a bit of controversy on the payments for that, but overall, kind of fun. All right, Durthu, A tier. He's the better of the two original DLC lords for the Wood Elves. You are the tree spirits. That is the stronger army. You get tree men. You are a tree man. You are one of the strongest early game lords. And yeah, you can quickly take out everything around you. You can use the woodways to take out the mountains, confederate everyone else very quickly, and then hop around the map. Very fun. Base game only needed. Would recommend. All right, Sisters of Twilight. I'm going to put them at S tier. They are the best Wood Elf experience by far. They are an S tier campaign. You have plenty of mechanics between the Forge of Daith and missions, and the overall just save the Oak of Ages. Um, yeah, it's fun. They're one of the second most recent paid DLCs. It was them versus Throt the Unclean. Very, very good DLC. They brought the Wood Elf rework, and they are very good. Um, and they have bonuses to the right units, Hawk Riders and stuff, and they've got a dragon, and they've got great access to equipment, and their events keep the game going now that they've been fixed. Dryka is A tier. She is the controversialist sorta FLC, but not really FLC lord of you need to own the Wood Elves and Warhammer 2 and the Sisters of Twilight to get Dryka in Mortal Empires. So she is like you need a lot of stuff to get her, but she does have a very fun campaign. You start off in the Griffinwood in the heart of the Empire, and you are the corrupt army. So you're all about the tree spirits and a few extra monster units, but you get those tree spirits quicker. And your elves are dyed purple because they're hexed. They don't fight as good, but they're still good. And again, just the ultimate tree spirit, kill the living army. Really easy early campaign because you can stomp on the Empire and the undead and expand out your woods, and then you can do the same thing as the other ones, just hopping from zone to zone to take over the woods. Dryka is powerful. The sisters are just a bit stronger. Okay, we're almost done. All right, all we've got left is Beastmen, and just for the, I'm just gonna do this now. Chaos needs a rework, no questions asked. You can mod them to make them fun, but otherwise, don't even touch it. Okay, Kazrak One Eye, I'd give him a C tier. He's the generic Beastman Lord. I think he's a Chariot Lord technically. Nothing particularly fun. He starts off in Estalia. All the Beastmen have their take over the world mechanic now, so that's a lot of fun. But he doesn't have anything else special about him. When it comes, I would say when I'm playing one of the other lords, he is the last one to confederate. Overall, he is an okay lord, nothing particularly special, but the Beastmen are now an S tier faction. All right, Malagor the Dark Omen. He is A tier. This is a flying spellcaster with a hybrid school between Wilds, Beast, Shadow, and Death, I think. So he's almost as good a spellcaster as Teclis. He starts off in the Badlands, so he's got it pretty easy as long as he doesn't end up against the Savage Orcs. He can get steamrolling pretty fast, level him up quickly, and he will absolutely destroy. His flight ability makes him an S tier lord. His campaign mechanics are pretty good. He's got all the other stuff for the Beastmen. He's great. I think this is Malagor the Omen. I don't know. Okay, so he's getting B tier. He's like the Chaos mutant guy, so like he's the really mutated one, and his whole thing is Chaos Spawn and Corruption. He starts off in the Empire though against a Wood Elf sub faction up there, and against the Empire in Middenland. So he's not got the greatest start position. You definitely want to lay low early on till you can get better units. And Norska's a potential ally, but not a great ally. Because if you end up at war with them, a lot of your debuffs do not work on them. He's an overall interesting campaign, but his start location is a little rough for my tastes. You have to fight some greenskins too, and just stuff that kind of strong early game you don't do great. All right, last and definitely not least, we have Tarox the Brass Bull, our last S tier. Oh my god, talk about broken. This guy is just insanely powerful. This is the Minotaur Lord. This is the guy that came with the rework of the Beastmen in the last DLC. Highly recommend, 10 out of 10. I'm playing through him right now. In fact, as soon as I'm done with this tier list, I'm going back to my campaign. Tarox destroys. He is a juggernaut of destruction. He starts off in Nagaron and he annihilates everybody. I wiped the floor with Malekith, Helebron, Marath. I'm wiping the floor with Marathi. Um, Rictus, they're getting wrecked. He is the Minotaur Lord. Bonuses for Minotaurs. Him, faction wide, and he's got his momentum and rampage mechanics. So he just keeps going. There's no stopping this guy. Yeah, it's insane. Like this bull cannot be stopped. It's a lot of fun on Mortal Empires and on Vortex. Tarox is a lot of good times. Just go out there and let him loose, and he'll annihilate 9/10 of an army himself. Overall, it's really fun with the momentum mechanics. You can just keep going. It's kind of similar to Lu Bu in Three Kingdoms. May that game rest in peace. Hopefully, we'll find out more about the sequel this year. All right, and that is my opinion on the rankings of the Legendary Lord campaigns, not the lords themselves, but their campaigns in Total War Warhammer 2. Overall, I think there's a lot of great lords, very top heavy on this list. You know, and even then even the C tiers, they're not bad. They've just got something going against them. Whether it be in a very bad starting location, better lords close by, not having anything going for them, it doesn't really matter. The D tier, I mean, it's a mix of nigh impossible start locations, better options, or just the game being unfairly difficult. And then these are the four Horde factions. They just plain need a rework. Creative Assembly, please rework the Warriors of Chaos when you unleash Warhammer 3 or soon after. And for the love of God, just let Nakai be a regular, just let him be a wanderer but still a lord. Please. All right. Whew, that was a long one. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see more of you in the new year. Farewell.